I've heard and read so many times that creativity is limitless. I gotta be honest, I don't know if I agree with that idea.
Huh?
Sure, your ability to imagine creative ideas might be limitless, but creativity isn't just ideas floating around in your head. It's the process of taking that idea out of your head and putting it out into the world in a way that other people can interact with it. The idea can take the form of pretty much anything. It can be really complex like a book or a business or even a house, or it can be really simple like a photo. But no matter what you're creating, it's guaranteed there's going to be things that get in the way of your creative process. Things that stand between you and arriving at a finished product. And I like to call those things creative boundaries. Everyone has creative boundaries. Some people's are really big and some people's are really small, but nobody's are set in stone. Inside the boundary is the space where you feel comfortable creating in. And outside the boundary is all the space you haven't conquered yet. Now, what are creative boundaries made of? Imposter syndrome, anxiety, self-doubt, comparison, budgets, deadlines. But in my opinion, nothing makes up the creative boundary more than inexperience. And that's because so many times we think we can't do something just because we haven't done it yet. Creativity is a muscle, and like any other muscle, if you want to make it stronger, you have to put in the work. Now, if that's the stage you're in, if you're ready to put in that work, if you want to push those creative boundaries out as far as they can possibly go, I want to share 3 pieces of creative direction that'll help you make that happen. Number 1, never cut corners. Number 2, work with what you got. And number 3, take big, bold risks. No matter what you do in life, following this rule will set you apart from the pack. And that's because we live in a society that's been trained to accept good enough as an acceptable standard. Now, I'm not saying you have to be perfect. I'm not saying everything you touch has to turn to gold. And I'm not saying every creative project you work on has to be groundbreaking. But what I am saying is if you want to achieve creative growth and creative success, there's a certain level of work ethic you have to bring to your creativity. Commit to being authentic with your work. How you doing? Oh, you're good. Don't share your work if you know it can be better, and never sacrifice quality for the sake of arriving at a finished product sooner. Good enough might be an acceptable standard for a lot of the world, but when you apply that standard to your creativity, you train yourself to stay within your comfortable creative boundary, and we don't want that. One of my favorite ideas in Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act, is to not put conditions on your creativity. This advice is so simple but so powerful. It means maybe you want to be a photographer, but the camera you have isn't that great. Maybe you want to be a designer, but you don't have a great laptop. I got my first camera, this guy right here, a Lumix G95D, about 10 months ago. At the time, I knew nothing about how to work a camera, nothing about what makes a good photo, nothing about videography, and I had no portfolio, no experience. But I knew I wanted to get into concert photography. I wanted to photograph live music. So I started DMing bands on Instagram that were playing in DC, and I would say, hey, if you let me in the door, I'll shoot your show, I'll send you the photos, no charge. I ended up shooting, I think, 4 shows in the span of a month. Every time I would show up, I would take maybe 500 photos, and there would be maybe 4 good ones. Almost every photo, the exposure was horrible, they were blurry, they were grainy, and not in a cool, filmy, aesthetic way, in a you don't know how to work a camera kind of way. And I say all this because I had no business trying to do concert photography. I had every reason to not try my hand at that. Terrible camera, no experience. But I'm happy I did it anyways because it forced me to get comfortable with being outside of my creative comfort zone. I had to learn on the fly, I had to pretend like I knew what I was doing, and honestly at the end of the day, that's all any of us are doing. We're pretending to know what we're doing. I feel like we don't talk about creative risk enough. Playing it safe with your creativity is a guaranteed recipe not for failure but for something so much worse. Stagnation and mediocrity and just a slow, painful creative death where you tell yourself, I love what I'm doing and I'm doing what I love, but you're not really doing it in any meaningful way, so it feels like you're going nowhere fast. I've felt that a million times. Chances are you've probably felt that before too. Meanwhile, all your creative goals and aspirations are sitting on the shelf collecting dust, waiting for you to wake up and realize you have one life and one opportunity to make them happen. This is what taking creative risk looks like. Pressing post even if you're terrified of what other people are going to think about it. Stepping in front of the camera for once. Doing the things that terrify you. Somewhere along the way, you're going to experience failure, but that's the entire point of taking risk. Because every time you fail, you're going to learn something that you can take with you moving forward. Then it becomes an upward cycle of failure and failure and learning, till eventually you learn and fail so much that you start to succeed. The creatives you admire and look up to aren't successful because they always got it right. They got it right because they got it wrong probably more times than they can even count, but they kept moving forward. And that's exactly what I'm challenging you to do. Take a small risk, embrace whatever failure you experience, learn something from it, and start to take bigger and bolder risks as you move forward. That's all we got. If you're still watching, I want to say thank you. This is my 4th YouTube video. I'm working towards posting 100 YouTube videos. That's my big goal right now I'm chasing. So if you like this, I hope you'll subscribe and be around for video number 5.